Greetings, children all over the world. This is yours truly, Family the Storyteller, and I'm back with another story. So I'd like to take a moment to talk about this book. It's a series of books, actually. It's a series of stories, in particular folktales. So I want to kind of rewind and start over. I've already read one story within this book, but I'd like to, if I may, start over. The book is called "The People Could Fly," and I want to really do this book justice because, in my opinion, I think it's full of a good history of where we've been in this country. The People Could Fly, American Black Folk Tales told by Virginia Hamilton and illustrated by Leo and Diane Dillon. Okay, so in my attempt to start over in this book, I'd like to really emphasize and read pretty much everything within this book so that everyone can get a full context of, the importance of this book as it illustrates a history of the Black diaspora in the Americas. So let's dive into it. As always, before I begin, I'd like to say I don't own the rights to this book. Okay, so now that that's out of the way, let's read the introduction of this book. Okay, introduction. Folk tales take us back to the very beginnings of people's lives, to their hopes and their defeats. American Black folk tales originated with peoples, most of whom long ago were brought from Africa to this country against their will. These people were torn from their individual cultures as they left the past, their families and their social groups, and their languages and customs behind. The Black peoples coming to America before the end of the Civil War entered as slaves, and they were separated and isolated by law because of their race. The African in them was forcibly suppressed by the white slave owners. They were not supposed to speak their own languages. The slave owners made them speak American English, but forbade them to learn to read or write it. They were compelled to do hard labor and exhorted never to run away. Alone and helpless, the slaves lived under conditions as brutal as any group of people has ever endured. It is amazing that the former Africans could ever smile and laugh, let alone make up riddles and songs and jokes and tell tales. As slaves, they were forced to live without citizenship, without rights, as property, like horses and cows, belonging to someone else. But no amount of hard labor and suffering could suppress their powers of imagination. Out of the contacts the plantation slaves made in the New World, combined with memories and habits from the old world of Africa, came a body of folk expression about the slaves and their experiences. The slaves created tales in which various animals, such as the rabbit, fox, bear, wolf, turtle, or terrapin, snake, and possum, took on the characteristics of the people found in the new environment of the plantation. The rabbit, known as Barabi, and later called Bruh, Buh, or Bruh Rabbit, became a particular favorite of the slave tellers. Rabbit was small and apparently helpless compared to the powerful bear, the wily fox, and the ferocious wolf. But the slave teller made the rabbit smart, tricky, and clever, the winner over larger and stronger animals. Still, Brer Rabbit sometimes got into trouble, just as the slaves did, which made him seem all the more human. To the slaves, the rabbit came to be identified with themselves, which makes these tales highly unusual in the animal folklore genre. Later on, probably after the Civil War, a slave character, usually called John, often took the place of Brer Rabbit in the tales. John became the trickster hero who outwits Old Mas, the slave owner, and wins his freedom. A group of slave narratives that were true tales of escape also developed, as did tales of magic, fantasy escape tales, and supernatural tales. In the Cape Verde Islands off the coast of West Africa, slavery was abolished in 1876. Black Portuguese fishermen freely emigrated from the islands to America, and they were unique in that they too had a history of slavery. They brought with them their highly individual folktales, some of which are included in this collection. Black folktales were first recorded in the late 19th century. In 1880, journalist Joel Chandler Harris collected some of the oral literature of the slaves in Uncle Remus, his songs and his sayings. Many Americans' first exposure to Black folktales came through the character of elderly Uncle Remus, the slave who had a favored position on the old plantation. Harris's Uncle Remus told animal tales in fractured English to the little white boy of the plantation house. But author Harris was not concerned with reproducing exactly the tales or their language. Harris and his contemporaries used phonetic dialect as a literary device. They felt that an exaggerated colloquial language best symbolized what they regarded as the quaint appeal of lowly rural people. Thus, some of the folktales recorded by early collectors are much more difficult to read than the narratives in the form of letters and petitions that some slaves managed to write themselves. But gradually, collectors attempted to express the tales in a more realistic, readable fashion. When Black English, such as Gullah from Angola English, was used, a glossary was added. The tales in this collection are in 4 sections that represent the main body of Black folk tales. I use a reasonably colloquial language or dialect, depending on the folktale. Moderate colloquialisms are understandable and readable. They reflect the expressiveness of the original slave teller and later the free Black storyteller. Remember that these folktales were once a creative way for an oppressed people to express their fears and hopes to one another. They lend themselves well to being read out loud, as they were told out loud so long ago. They can be enjoyed by young and old alike. Remember also that these tales, like all folk tales, belong to all of us. They are part of our American tradition and part of the history of our country. They show you how I tell the black folk tales, for they are told in my own voice, echoing the voices of slaves and fugitives, some of whom are my ancestors. To this very day, folk tales are being told, altered, retold, and made. A tale naturally changes as it is told by one person to another. These tales were created out of sorrow, but the hearts and minds of the black people who formed them, expanded them, and passed them on to us were full of love and hope. We must look on to the tales as a celebration of the human spirit. Remember the voices from the past. As do the folk tales, keep close all the past that was good and that remains full of promise. This was written by Virginia Hamilton, Yellow Springs, Ohio, April 1985. All right, so that's the introduction of The People Could Fly. Once again, written by American Black Folk Tales, told by Virginia Hamilton, illustrated by Leo and Diane Dillon. The People Could Fly. I keep repeating this because I really want to dive into this book, to this collection of stories. Because as we went through the introduction, to me, it's a deep book. It's full of historical, like a timeline. It's full. To me, well, not to me anymore because it is what it is. This book is a collection of folk tales, stories told on the plantation by a group of slaves that came, and that was their way of expressing, passing their time, telling stories, making folks laugh, relieve themselves from a hard day's work. Whatever the situation was, this was their way to, I guess, express themselves. So we're going to be diving into this book, and I'll be reading a story from this. I'll be reading stories from this book, and I imagine that everyone will enjoy this set of stories. So before we begin, let's jump right into it.